So let's just take a moment and sink into the room. If you have anything you'd like us to talk about tonight, feel free to put it in the chat. I also would love to know how your practice is going if you're practicing. Or any kind of obstacles you run into when you're meditating. But in the meantime, we'll just take a deep breath, sink into the room. Let your attention fill the entire space at once, so that you're not hard focused on any one thing. Okay. So Lynn says practicing every day, but there's anxiety lately. Lynn, do you think it's yours or someone else's? Okay. Is it attached to words and images? Okay. Have you worked at all with the EFT, the tapping on the website? I'm going to type in a web address. So on bodymindtapping.com, there's an entire page that is dedicated to tapping for anxiety. It's many videos that kind of take you through and train yourself how to really lift that off of you. And I promise you, if you did that, you would feel better. You know, it really gets deep to the root of it. Okay. But for now, let's just show up in this moment. You've been swimming around the filters of your mind all day. And we're just going to squeeze right out of them so that we can have a clean experience with this moment. This is what's real. The filters, the stories, they're really just part of the game of life. The problem is everybody in this world is caught in them. And so until you can slip through that into the silent space, they seem more real than reality. And the way we slip into the reality space is we just let everything come to a stop. We don't have to stop it. We just have to stop feeding it. The mind moves in cycles and circles, but your attention is what feeds it. Attention is a very powerful thing. Whatever you place your attention on evolves. It becomes more of itself. It builds. So let's talk about that in regards to something like anxiety. Most people, when they're anxious, they start placing their attention on that anxiety, but they don't really look at it directly. It's kind of a slightly a glance stare at it. Instead of looking directly at it, it's almost like you worry about it. And what that does is it feeds more energy into this moving story. Or they try and push it away. But pushing it away is not the cessation of feeding it. Whenever you push something away, you have to still have a hand on it, don't you? And so as you push it away, you actually kind of push it a little bit into your subconscious, where it can start manifesting in ways that you have even less control over. The surest way to deal with anxiety, especially anxiety that is your own, is to go directly into it. You know, it's like, okay, here I am, sitting in a room, experiencing anxiety. And you can even describe it to yourself. I'm experiencing anxiety. It's an electrical heat in my solar plexus. It's a dark cloud of dread. And once you really have it in your hands, you accept it exactly the way it is. When you give it attention in that way, it evolves itself back into the full matrix of the mind. But that can't happen until you're okay with the fact that it's there. Pain is the same way. You know, I've told the story a million times of the blinding pain I used to get in my back when I would meditate. What finally made it go away was a legitimate thought of, what if it's just okay to be in blinding pain? What if this is just okay? What if this doesn't have to change? When you can make space for something, it finds its place. When instead you try and crowd it out and reject it and push it away, then it just loudly bounces off the walls of the little box that you've created for it. So what's great about something like EFT is that it takes you through all of that. You begin by accepting it exactly the way it is. And then from that space, you kind of keep that file of that trauma open while you tap through your body. And what that does is it literally takes some of the stress centers in your brain and releases their stress in the face of it. And so it's a very quick way to make changes. But the underlying principle of it is the same principle that I teach every single week. There's nothing to resist. There's nothing to defend. There's nothing to understand. There's nothing to control. Just show up for this moment exactly as it is, and continue your process of unfolding into it. It it turns out to be the answer to just about everything. Doesn't mean nothing bad will ever happen. It means that when it does, it'll sit in a vast context. There'll be room for it. All right. So let's step into this moment. Be aware of what your body feels like. And just let your attention fall on it unobstructed. Let yourself feel it. And let that be okay. That stress isn't so different than an infant crying out for attention. It'll respond to your nurturing, silent nurturing. Accepting attention. While you hold the bigger picture in mind of this moment. Surely you've noticed, as you've come to these classes, that as you step into the moment, even though nothing has been resolved in your life, you're in a state of resolution. The problems aren't problems in this moment. The reason for that is that in this moment, you aren't comparing it to anything. In this moment, you remove time from the equation. And so you're not comparing it to some past moment. That comparison is the source of the difficulty, not the moment itself. And you should be able to see that whenever you step into meditation. The problem of the problem disappears. And for a little while, your body doesn't have to live out the story of having a problem. So you sleep better, you feel better, But if you're smart, you'll pay attention to the implications of that. If showing up in full consciousness means that the problem of the problem disappears, the problematic aspect of the problem disappears, that means the problematic parts of your life are a product of lack of consciousness. They exist in the dark spots. Awareness is like a flashlight. It just illuminates everything. I guess I have to say it's like a torch. So for your meditation, that should make it easier for you to let go into meditation. But for your life in the dream time, for your life in the world of stories, it really should change that too. When you go into meditation and the suffering aspect of the problem disappears, it shows you that it's not real. It's a trick of mind. And so you step back into a world that is built on comparisons and therefore built on suffering. But you know it's not real. It's just a system of stories, a system of filters. You can trade one out for another. You can look at one of those stories and just clean it up. You can change the storyline of something from the past. And it changes the present. It changes who you are in the present. You'll find, though, if you really do it completely, it even changes the people that were part of that story. But don't take my word for that. Show yourself. It's interesting. You know, that's where all the spiritual teachings on forgiveness come into play. Forgiveness is the healing of a past story. It's no longer having to hold somebody's identity to a tight truth. You're okay with them morphing into a good person. You're okay with them moving on. So tonight, let's spend some time in the silence. But without pushing any stories away. Let the entire world, the real and the conjured, exist in the space all at once, without you grabbing onto any of it. Use your breath to stabilize yourself. In other words, push nothing away. Resist nothing. The room and everything in it, all here at once. The mind and everything in it, all here at once. Your body and all of its feelings. All here at once. Your awareness. Falling upon all of it at once. Those things you hide from. Let them be present too. That's vital energy you use to push them away. let the peace and light of this moment touch all of it. And as you do that, let it evolve. Let it become whatever it needs to become. It's okay if the records change. You don't have to keep an accounting log for everything. Those are all just filters placed on the light moving through the present moment. Most of them were acquired haphazardly. Make them available to your awareness. So they can evolve. What if you could be so aware that even as you walk through your day, you know what filters from your past you're pulling forward to deal with the moment? So that you could put down dysfunctional ones. Take them into your meditative state and just watch them until you understand how they were put together. What if you could pick the perfect filter for each moment? It's the essence of what religions try and hand you. Filters of gratitude, filters of love, filters of ethical behavior, of considering your neighbor, but most of them never take you to a place in yourself where you can operate any of that. What if in your day you could catch yourself using a bad filter, one from your past, that was just built reactively out of fear? And replace it with a filter of understanding, a filter of compassion. What would that do to your day? Even if you never spoke a word, just radiating through a cleaner filter would make a major shift to your life. It would be a major shift in what you attract to you. All it really would take is wakefulness. I used to set a timer to go off every, I can't remember if it was 5 or 10 minutes. Just to check in and make sure I was awake. Every 5 to 10 minutes I would check in and am I caught in anything? You train yourself that way. Meditation isn't just about your time in reality, it also works on the storyline of things. Because when you know that none of that is real, to constantly let your light shine through a filter of fear and suffering, it stops making sense. The truth is, you have nothing to lose. You were given a temporary window of time in this story. And when that time ends, this story of you will end, transform into something else. But that's not a loss. You were participating in a challenge, and then you stop and return to reality. But so there's nothing to really be afraid of. And everything you're experiencing is relative to the stories in your mind. You could let it all go and approach it as someone else. I used to just ask what my teacher would do. And then I would just give myself to being transformed into that, and then I would step back into the situation like that. Christians ask, what would Jesus do? People for centuries have put up images of saints on their walls, because the more attention you give to an image of divinity, the more you rearrange into that shape. It's okay to let go of you. The personality part of you, so that you can have a new experience. You never really fully lose it while you're alive anyways. It reassembles. But you can get really good at just letting it all go. And when you do that, you start to have new experiences outside the capabilities of your personality. And they create these little moments that are incongruent with the current structure of your personality. Like if your worldview is true, this thing would not have been able to happen quite like this. And so it works on it slowly. Little changes, little initiations. Each time becoming more and more flexible, until eventually it's all still there, but it's just now a tool that you can use to communicate with other people, to participate in the world of personalities. Not something you have to defend. In that way, life becomes much easier. Still hard because life is built on hardships. And power is earned through challenge. But the meaning of all of it becomes less dire, less anxiety producing. And there's just a natural maturing that happens. When you no longer have to defend this individual constellation of stories, it frees you up to take a much broader picture into account. You speak with someone and you have a quiet sense of their entire system of filters, where they're at in their road of evolution. It makes it very easy to feel compassion. It also makes it easy to say the difficult things when those things need to be said as well, because you can see this broad picture of what's going to happen if you don't clean up some misstep that somebody is making. When all those layers of the onion are removed, when you're no longer clutching to your filters, what's left is the entire universe. And all it takes to get there is showing up in this moment. And letting it all be exactly what it is. The awareness has an intelligent light about it. That mostly handles the rest. That intelligent light is a main part of what you are. At first it looks separate because you're looking at it through the lens of your stories. But as you remove all those layers, what you find is yourself. A freedom you didn't even know you were missing. this week in your meditation, I want you to sit with all of it in the space at once. Unconditional acceptance. Nothing to change, nothing to heal. Let the light of the awareness take care of that. You just be with all of it at once. The light of your awareness should touch all of it. And then when you're walking through the stories of your life during the day, pay attention to what filters you're using, what's triggered in you, and why. And if it's a dysfunctional trigger, if it is something that makes you angry or makes you frustrated or hurt, bring the awareness forward. Let it flood the space. If you're alone, ask yourself to be shown a more functional way through it, a more functional angle of view. But if you're in the room with someone and it's happening in the moment, just throw your attention on the moment itself and feel what comes naturally from that space. You'll learn more from doing that than any book can teach you. That is living your spiritual life. And if you find you have trouble doing it, but you know that filter, when you get home that night, sit with that. Sit in meditation and just wonder about it quietly. Put that filter in front of you on the screen of your mind. Does it have a color? Does it have a sound? Does it have a feeling? Or are you more aware of it than that? Does it have a storyline that you're aware of? And just open yourself up to the moment with that right in front of you. And just let your awareness interact with it. It will come clear. It will evolve. And you'll be changed in a very beneficial way if you do it. The more you do that, the more you're able to do that. Until eventually your entire life becomes something intentional. Are there any questions about that? I feel like that was a lot. Okay, everybody. I will be here next Thursday, and I hope you all have a good week. Good luck with your practice. Thanks, Lynn. Have a good night.